The Stack. People, Business, Technology. With Dan Tomaszewski of Everything MSP.
Hello, everybody. Dan Tomaszewski here. Welcome to this week's episode of The Stack, where we tackle people, business, and technology. And I'm excited today to bring on our guest. We've got Nolan Green, who is the product marketing manager with Auvik. How are you doing today, Nolan?
Doing great, Dan. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you here. I always enjoy having conversations with you. And you guys have jumped into a particular area that really captured my attention. You guys have done a survey. You conducted a survey, a very comprehensive survey for that matter, that addressed or spoke to over 2,000 IT professionals. And this is both from an MSP perspective as well as internal IT. So a lot of great detail. And ultimately, you guys uncovered a lot of information that are shaping not only roles within an organization, but departments overall. You guys were looking to get a better handle of the rapidly evolving IT landscape. We know that there is increased demand, even though that we have challenges specific to talent shortages and resource limitations and so on. Now, I'm sure this particular survey provided just incredible insights for you guys for Auvik overall. But when we talk about MSPs, why are the findings here important to them?
Yeah, it's a great question. And having gone through the research, I think it'll uncover a lot of new opportunities for MSPs to make sure they're offering the services that organizations want today as they plan for things like remote and hybrid workforces, as they really look to upgrade their networks for the demands of today and tomorrow.
Gotcha. And I think one of the things, in fact, just recently on one of our MSP discussion group calls, we were talking a bit about, the area of just the MSP business model and how it's, maybe one of our members mentioned the word outdated and maybe a little boring. And that's where we need to really stay on top of these trends in order to breathe new life into what we do day in, day out for our clients, because it no longer is, just about the blinky lights. What's critical about those blinky lights is we need to be doing our job to make sure that all that just works. We have well-oiled machines for our clients. But we also have to take a look about the other trends in an organization and what are things that we can do to continue to show even more value that we as MSPs can provide. And so taking a look at that, overall, what were some of the top IT challenges that organizations are faced with that you guys found in the survey?
Sure thing. So unsurprisingly, across industries, the IT labor shortage is still a really big challenge. 49% of our respondents said they were feeling the crunch of labor shortages. And like I said, it's not entirely surprising. I've been following this trend for a few years now, and it's a really continuation of things, in my view, that started at the height of the pandemic with people retiring and leaving jobs during that time, which led to a vacuum of skills and institutional knowledge in many organizations. And, the labor market, in turn, has been a bit uneven in IT skills. And so many organizations are turning to MSPs to close that gap, knowing that these dynamics, of course, affect MSPs as well as they search for the best talent. And this, of course, is an ongoing thing, but it can't be seen as completely separate from our other challenges that we found. The number 2 challenge being budget and cost, coming in at 47%. Now, with this one, there's some good news. 87% of our respondents believe that 2024 is bringing about increased budgets, and only 4% are expecting decreases. So this is definitely better than what we've seen in some years. But of course, budget is always an evergreen concern. I've been in the industry nearly 15 years, and this conversation never goes away. But tying that back to labor, there's obviously a premium for skilled talent, which can fragment budget increases as there are always needs for new hardware and software, um, and brand new technology initiatives to stay competitive. And speaking of which, these budget increases, they do vary widely across industries. Some industries like utilities and energy, they're nearly half expect an increase of 30 to 50%. But one third of our retail respondents either expect a really small increase or none at all, or even a decrease. And I'll cover a couple more challenges. Infrastructure and performance was the next most common challenge. And again, I think you have to really think about these um, as they relate to each other. How does the infrastructure challenge relate to the labor and the budget challenge? Network visibility was another common one, up there at 45%. And of course, that's also a reflection of how complex networks are becoming. And just the last one I want to point out is that we saw a huge jump in configuration management challenges. 38% cited those as a top challenge versus just 27% in 2023. Of course, I think that this speaks to everything I already mentioned: labor, budget, and added complexity.
Yeah, I mean, those configuration, you did mention configuration challenges, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, and what was that stat? Was it 27%?
It was 27% in 2023, and it jumped to 38% in 2024.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, having that visibility, having the ability to, to get into the weeds, if you will,
Right.
is critical. Because you talk about the complexities. We're adding more and more technology for a particular organization as they grow. While there might be some challenges from a labor shortage, organizations are still growing. They're adding, new headcount overall. And so that's increasing the size of their infrastructure, and having that insight is just is critical. Without that, you're basically to some extent in the dark. Of course, we all know that there are tools that we can use to remotely monitor and manage to be able to have some inventory of assets and such. But we need to drill deeper and get a better insight of what those configs look like to ensure that there is no conflict, and that things are where they need to be. When you take a look at all of these challenges, how are organizations responding to them at this point?
Well, perhaps unsurprising to the folks on our stream, outsourcing is a big way of addressing these challenges. And what was interesting in the research is that outsourcing, its overall rate was pretty flat year over year. Around the same number of organizations are outsourcing MSPs, but what changed was the number of tasks that they're outsourcing. So some big opportunities for MSPs lie in this, and some of the interesting things that we found. So in 2023, only 25% of our respondents outsourced the mapping of their networks. Well, that increased to 35% in the space of 1 year. And we saw similar jumps in other areas. Troubleshooting took a 10% jump, so 32% to 42% are relying on outsourcing for network troubleshooting. And you mentioned configuration management, a huge opportunity for MSPs to provide value. That went from 35% to 44% outsourced.
What do you think? I mean, do you think it's just more the knowledge of the tool sets that are out there that help to increase this? I mean, do you have any other data as far as what's the driving factor there?
I think it is the realization of we don't have the hours and the resources to do all these things on our own. Our networks are becoming more complex, and one drum that I keep beating is that the network is ever more critical to the business. The actual operation of the business relies on the network at its backbone. So there's no margin for error. You need really high service levels and always on connectivity. And it's in many cases better to leave it to a trusted expert.
Yeah, and I think I think back to some clients that we've seen in the past. There's some that internal IT person is spread too thin, where they're actually fulfilling some operational functions as well, where they're
Right.
they're pulling reports and printing reports, and they're getting into databases, and so a lot of things are I to some extent overlooked and aren't given that TLC that they should. um, but you're right. I mean, from an infrastructure perspective, if an organization isn't removing servers and putting more into the cloud, one way or another, that infrastructure is that foundational component. And if you don't take care of that particular component of it, it's only going to have greater effects on the rest of the network. If you have other technology there, if you have servers in place and in-house, or if you have more and more out in the cloud, you still need to have that solid infrastructure in order to ensure you're able to get out and seek that information that you're in need of. So let's talk a little bit about automation. And I guess I want to see, there's a lot in the reports that come into automation. I think there's different reasons for this, but do you believe that there's a role for automation to play in addressing these overall challenges?
Of course, automation was the central theme of this year's report, and it's the other side of the coin from outsourcing. Outsource what you can. What can you automate? And we believe automation is a must for meeting the demands of modern networks. And MSPs can also help provide better outcomes by automating tasks like documentation, troubleshooting, configuration, backups. We found that while automation adoption has risen across the board, organizations that are about at the 1,000 to 5,000 employee size, they've achieved the greatest levels of automation. And what that says to me is that smaller organizations, the ones who are generally more reliant on MSPs, they might be searching for assistance in providing automation. And of course, MSPs can add efficiency to their own operations by automating
Right.
wherever they can.
Yeah, I mean, I took a look at there's a particular page 22. It's talking about what's keeping those IT pros from fulfilling their wish list, and the 43%, that lack of time, which as predicted is the most cited reason for IT professionals not to be able to tackle their wish lists. And I think many organizations, whether it be an MSP, seeking out a new prospective client, or just somebody in a standard IT department, often there are things that are on that list that just continue to get pushed to the back burner, and they're so critical to the overall security of their network, and there's just those things can't be pushed back. And so use of automation can help fill the gap where there's that labor shortage, right?
Absolutely. And one thing I will say is to give high marks to our MSP respondents. 90% were automating many of the common network tasks that we asked about, and even our low and beyond networking as well. And even our lowest tasks were at 80-something% automation. So that was really, really heartening to see. But at the same time, only a quarter to a third had completely automated these tasks. So of course, there's a lot of opportunity to automate more and uncover new opportunities related to that.
Yeah, and I think having a person, or ultimately dedicated, whether it's a person fully dedicated to it, or there just being some objectives, some goals, as far as putting different levels of automation in. If we just leave it up to, hey, we should automate, it will never get done, right? We need to have goals. We need to be able to set different parameters and time frames to be able to say, all right, over the next 6 months, we're going to tackle A, B, and C. That's the only way that it's really going to happen ultimately.
Right.
So, thinking about hybrid workforce, we're now 4 years since the pandemic started. Life has completely changed, from a hybrid world. We still have, many organizations out there that have a lot of staff. They're still working from home or working from anywhere. I think the pandemic has really reshaped how and where we work overall. So when you think through that, how has the increased migration to remote and hybrid work, played a role here with those findings?
That's a really great question. And I think we're seeing, with this year's research that, and I think, we, not surprising considering all that's been made of, return to office requirements and the backlash against that, and things of that nature. I think things are settling to where a lot of organizations are 50-50 hybrid, or they might be 80-20 hybrid, but they've basically kind of figured out the balance that works for them. And obviously taking into account organizations where remote doesn't work at all. And there's a growing confidence in the ability of IT stacks to accommodate these demands of the hybrid workforce. With regard to the network, we like to say that the network is no longer just in the four walls of your organization's building, if you have one. It's anywhere that work happens. That perimeter has expanded to basically anywhere people can do work. And one thing that was interesting is while the vast majority of our respondents were confident in the ability of their tool sets to accommodate hybrid and remote work, the degree of this confidence varied wildly across, going from the C-suite down to on-the-ground technicians.
Yeah, and that was really, I guess, popping out for me is there's always some disparity between, like, let's say sales and operations, right? We got people out there selling, and then you got people fulfilling. But there's also a reality that there is this, there's some differences, this disparity between, executives, leaders in an organization, and those in IT. And I think, some of it comes down to just the two not being on the same page, right? Because we, as in the IT world, from a technical perspective, we have certain views and visions as far as what different IT tools and what different type of software and hardware can do. But from an operational perspective or from a management perspective, they have different thoughts. Now, ultimately, these two need to come together, right? There needs to be some way that, we see these problems together. So, ultimately, can we talk a little bit more about how there is this discrepancy or this disparity between both the IT leaders and the overall management?
Right. I think there's a difference in focus between the tactical and the strategic, and there's nothing wrong with that. Technicians are carrying out these activities on the ground that enable these strategic objectives. And I think what I'd like to see from it is more communication across levels. I'm understanding the tactical that's needed to affect the strategic, and understanding how the tactical is supporting that. So yeah, nothing surprising or wrong with the different objectives. One thing though, one thing that was a little interesting was that confidence in the tactical being carried out well definitely varied quite a bit from executive to technician. For example, we saw much different numbers with the confidence in how effective configuration backup was. And I think the closer you are to something, the more you might see those smaller cracks. So I think it's definitely something that organizations keep in mind and facilitate that communication across levels.
Gotcha. Well, this report certainly has provided a lot of great insights for me. As I was digging through it, there are some things that really get you thinking and help you to determine where you need to make some shifts. we must continue to adapt as MSPs. If we feel that we know everything and we're complacent, we're going to get another MSP is going to drive right past us, real fast, right? So we need to make sure that we are on top of it. Now, we're going to put into the comments, we'll put links to this report. Of course, it is available at auvik.com, but we will put the link to that report directly. But you guys also have a webinar coming up. Can you tell me a little bit more about that event?
Sure thing. So if you want to dive deeper into the insights from the 2024 IT Trends Report, Auvik's Director of Product Marketing and Management, Glenn Gray, will be giving a discussion on Tuesday, May 21st at 2 p.m. Eastern.
Excellent. And we'll include some information about that. And of course, you can find information about events that are happening in the industry, including Auvik's upcoming event at everythingmsp.com if you go under the channel events section. Also, if you want to learn more about Auvik and all the great things that Auvik can do to help your MSP be more efficient, more productive, as well as more profitable, you can search and seek out Auvik directly at everythingmsp.com. Learn more about them there, as well as you can reach out to them, send them a message, and go from there. So, Nolan, as always, thank you so much for your time. It was a lot of great information, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for being here, and we will see you guys next week. Take care, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to The Stack.